Welcome to Bear Necessities, your official Coventry Bears podcast. We live at coventrybears.com. You can get us wherever you get your podcasts. And we are here. The season has started. And on this show, we're going to bring you all of the news and reaction from the Bears. Fantastic performance against Barrow that ended sadly in a 38-20 defeat on Sunday at the Butts Park Arena, but plenty of positives to take from there and plenty to talk about. And we will hear from head coach Rich Squires and player coach Dave Scott over the course of this episode. But before we get to those lovely gentlemen, better introduce ourselves for you. So my name is Dave. I'm one of your co-hosts, and joining me as always is my co-pilot and former Bears fullback, Craig Cathcart. Craig, how you doing? Glad to have the season up and running?
Yeah, I got that Matchday feeling back today. I was excited as soon as I got up, waiting for the game all day. You know, it was lovely to watch some rugby live. It wasn't the result we wanted, but actually I was quite proud of the team and the players today and everyone at the club. You know, there's definitely potential in this squad, and I think they showed some of that today.
Absolutely. So before we get into the story of the game from Sunday, then it is worth pointing out that Craig and I we're both very fortunate to be deemed important enough to be part of the Bears media team. So we were able to watch the game at the Butts in person, and it I don't know about you, Craig, but I didn't really know what to expect going there. I perhaps was expecting there to be fewer people there than there were, but when you think about the entourage a team brings to a game anyways, not surprising that there were a few people there. But aside from getting your temperature checked and having to wear a mask and having to check in and all of that, it felt pretty normal, didn't it? And it felt, you know, I think hats off to the club. They've put so much effort into organising this and making sure that the game was able to take place. It was really efficient. It didn't take any longer than normal to get into a game. It was a really relaxed, friendly atmosphere. It was so good to see everyone again. And, you know, it only took 5 minutes of the game before somebody shouted forward from the crowd. So it felt very normal once we got there. I don't know how you found it.
Yeah, it did and it didn't. It was eerily quiet, I have to say that. You know, as you said, you know, there was people there, and it was a bit strange because even though I'm part of the media team, I go up normally as a fan, and I didn't feel maybe that I could shout as much as I normally do at game, since everyone there is supposed to be staff rather than fans. But it was an exciting game to watch. It was a good game to watch. It was, as you said, it was a friendly atmosphere. It was really nice. It was good to see the game. You could walk around, not throughout all of the stadium, but you could walk around the side. One thing to note as well, though, that you don't normally get is you could pretty much hear everything that was going on the field. So every tackle echoed around the ground. You know, the talk from both teams, you could hear what they were saying. You could hear what the coaches were saying. It was really interesting, actually. Really, really interesting. And, you know, for me, anyway, a good experience. I'm looking forward to having all the fans back in the stadium and creating a bit more atmosphere. But it was good to be back after 14 months or whatever it is to watch a game and see a good performance as well. So, you know, I was very pleased to have been able to go and feel a bit privileged to be able to do that. And I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of the other guys that come down as fans, you know, every home game.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also echo you on that feeling privileged. So thanks a lot to the club for letting us be part of it on Sunday. So Craig, you mentioned not only was it good to get back, but it was a pretty good game to watch as well, and lots of positives for the Bears. So before we hear from head coach Rich Squires, let's do a quick run through of the game for anyone who perhaps wasn't able to watch the stream. So after 15 minutes, I'm going to admit there was risk of it being a bit of a sour day, because within the first 15 minutes, Barrow did get through for three converted tries. So the first one, all of them actually were from pretty pinpointable mistakes as well from the Bears, which just shows the ruthlessness of this Barrow team, and it helps you understand why they're one of the favourites for promotion. But their first try came under the post, and it was just last tackle, and the guy went in from dummy half. Second try was just some Barrow made good use of a break, a line break they made. It took them way further up the field than we perhaps would have expected them to finish that set in, and they finished from close range. And then the third one, unfortunately, there was a high ball that wasn't dealt with particularly well by the Bears defensive line, and they stepped over to score. And at that point, 18-0 down, I think it would be fair to say that a few people were fearing the worst for the Bears, but that's when it started to click for them. And, they put a couple of decent sets together, and then they got a couple of tries on the board. So the scorer of the first Bears try of 2021 in Betfred League One was Nathan Hill, who had a terrific game throughout, it should be said. Some great work from Kieran Sherratt, making his I guess it's his second debut, and Hill was able to wriggle through on the left edge. And then Sam Bowering, he powered over shortly after that for a really impressive finish, and that took it to 10-18. And you thought, okay, perhaps there's something happening here. Frustratingly, the Bears pretty quickly after that did drop a pass when they were trying to return the kickoff, and from the resulting switch of possession, the Bears' arch nemesis Carl Forster scored against us again from close range. That took it out to 24-10. But the Bears hit back once more before half time with that man Hill again, somehow getting it down in the corner, going in from dummy half, and despite being tackled by three huge men, he somehow managed to get the ball down. And that took us to 14-24 at half time. And there was a real sense of something might be on here in the break. And for much of the second half, the Bears were on top. They just perhaps lacked that cutting edge that Barrow had, and weren't able to just find the killer positions and the killer passes. Barrow did score next, taking out to 28-14, sorry. But then the Bears hit back again, this time through Matty Wellham. They put together a really good set, and there was a really nice kick floated out to the left edge from Dan Coates, and Matty Wellham ended up with the ball and touched it down. Conversion took it to 20-28 with a good amount of time left. And as you'll hear in some of the post-match interviews, I think that's perhaps where something the Bears can learn from this game was to keep their composure and be aware of how long was left on the game, because they did start to rush things at this point and perhaps didn't realise quite how much time they had left. And they were still in the game with 10 minutes to go. It was still that 8-point gap. But then, unfortunately, Hill was sin-binned, and the Bears looked like they were going to hold out for the duration of the sin bin, but did ship a try right at the end of that 10 minutes, and then slipped one more through right at the end of the game as well, which made it 7 tries in total for the visitors, 4 for the Bears. Final score of Bears 20, Barrow 38. But considering Barrow were relegated from the Championship last time out, and they are many people's favourites to go up, I think that's a result is going to turn a lot of heads for those people who are watching League One, and it's a result and a performance that gives the Bears a lot to build on as we go into the next couple of matches. So Craig and I are going to give our thoughts on it very shortly, but first let's hear what head coach Rich Squires thought about it.
Rich, first game, obviously not the result you wanted, but feels like there's a lot of positives you can take out of that. What did you make of that as a performance?
Yeah, I'm obviously disappointed with the result, but it's from us it is a loss and something a tough one to take, really, because we're in the game for 60 minutes. But yeah, a lot of heart and a lot of grit from the boys there, and they've done it tough and really stood up there against a team that I think came here quite complacent. But we've stood up to be counted for, and hopefully put a message out across the league and across the country, hopefully.
I mean, aside from that opening 15 minutes where Barrow got 3 tries in quick succession, I mean, that effectively was the difference between the two teams in the end. You must be really proud of the effort that your boys put in, not just from a physical point of view, but actually as the game went on, they looked more and more threatening in attack. I mean, were you seeing things that you've been working on in pre-season coming out there? Yeah,
excited to come together. It's only our first game, a lot of them together, obviously, because of all the swapping and changes during pre-season. You take the first 15 minutes out, and we're in a ball game, but I don't think they scored it. It's a lot of soft points, and they're all underneath the stick. So that's something we've kind of got to focus on. But we didn't get complacent with them, and we stayed in the dogfight with them. But it's a lot of mental toughness on our behalf as well, because of they've really taken it to them and kind of put a stamp down on it, and which is something we wanted to do with our middles and that defensive focus. So yeah, take the first 15 out, and I think it's a different ball game altogether.
So let's focus on positives then, particularly like any individual performers that stood out? I mean, obviously Nathan Hill bagged himself a couple of tries. There was some big efforts. You were bigging up Peter Ryan in the pre-season preview, and he put in a couple of staggering hits.
Yeah, he did.
Anyone in particular you'd want to shout out as head coach?
Yeah, I thought Nathan Hill were outstanding. He was the best player on the pitch by a country mile. But again, I thought our middles, did really well. Peter had a physical presence and carried forward. I thought Sam Bowering, when he came on, just calms us down a little bit. Kevin Sherratt in his first stint was really good. But it sets a platform to play off the back of it. Dave Scott ended up going into 9, so he's doing a completely different job. But with the proud thing is everyone's kind of grafted for each other. It was a real team performance. So 1-17 really stuck the hand up. But yeah, Nate Phil was the best player on the pitch by a country mile.
And how are you doing injury wise? Because I noticed Kieran was sporting an ice pack for a bit after the break, but he did come back on. Are you looking in good shape going into next week?
Yeah, he's popped a blood vessel in his wrist, so it's just swollen up. So there's nothing really muscular or bone wise there. I think the only one is Pete, but he passed his head test at the end. He just didn't get to go back on. So apart from that, it'll just be sore bodies in the morning, but we'll be good to go next week.
And how do you think the lads reacted to the new rules? I know you'd had a couple of pre-season games, but this is where it really mattered. It seemed to be at times when you forced a couple of repeat sets and you were able to make a bit of ground at the pitch on that. Do you think it's almost going to be something that can play into your favour the way you like to play?
Yeah, I think so, especially on this 4G pitch. Once our back five really do a good job of getting us on the front foot. I think it's still new to some of the referees and how fast they want to play it as well, because it's there's some of them that have been given a set restarts that are fairly quick, and some of the slower ones are not getting given. So I think the further on in the season with a little bit of consistency and the referees start to jump in it, I think we could get some real benefit from it.
And I think today's scoreline was probably a lot closer than many people not connected with the Bears would have predicted. What would your message be to the rest of the league looking at today's scoreline and trying to make a judgment call on what the Bears are going to be like this year? Do you feel you've laid down a marker for people to take notice this year? Yeah,
I do, but I think 38-20 flattens them. They're not going on today's performance. They're not 18 points better than where we are today. But it's something where we kind of let people judge us. We enjoy being the underdogs. And it's a kind of mindset we've kind of set. Let people judge us, but we'll do our business on the training field, and then when it comes to a Sunday, we'll sit down our marker and set our platform for where we need to be.
So last question then. Next week, obviously a long trip down to West Wales. We talked about that in the preview episode, that it's obviously going to be one that naturally you would target for a win. What are you thinking now? Now you've got that 80 minutes to look back on. How does that affect how you approach next week?
No, we'll go the same way. We've just set what we wanted to do. I think we've talked about it before. We wanted to set a really good platform today and something to build on. And the boys have done that. They've set a platform of a real high standard for where they need to be. But there's areas in there we can get better at. So we need to stick at that platform and and improve. And we'll do that for the week. We'll address the little bits, but take a lot of positives into next week and obviously try and build on it.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for your time, Rich, and good luck next week.
Thank you.
So thanks to Rich Squires for his post-match thoughts, and we will be hearing from player coach Dave Scott a bit later in the episode as well. But Craig, I mean, we've heard from Rich there, and I tried to cover it in my summary of the match, but obviously not the result we wanted, but so many positives.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you take out the 18 points we shipped in the first 15 minutes, we matched them matched them all the way through the game. Really, it was a game that it didn't necessarily look like we could win at any point. We were 8 points behind, and had we scored again, then I think the momentum would have been with us, and we would have been certainly looking at to try and win the game. But to match Barrow for pretty much the whole of the game is a really good performance. We talked in the episode we did last week where we did a preview. We answered one of the questions we had, which was around, are we going to be able to match teams in the middle? Something the Bears have always struggled with, and we did today. We absolutely matched Barrow in the middle. They were absolutely blowing at times in the second half. Their pack was really struggling because they were getting smashed every time they took the ball up. That's not to say they didn't give it back as well, but it was great to see the Bears pack go toe-to-toe with a big old team. And Peter Ryan put in some phenomenal hits, but across the park, there was big hits all day long, and that makes a big difference. It forced errors, it forced turnovers, it gave the Bears a bit of breathing space to do stuff with the ball whenever they had it. And probably the main difference was, as I say, that slow start. And when the Bears made a mistake, when there was a turnover or a repeat set, Barrow were very clinical. They punished Bears the Bears didn't make that many mistakes in the game, but were punished pretty much for every single one. Barrow standoff as well had a fantastic game. His kicks were causing all sorts of problems all the way through the game. We dealt relatively well at times and then made mistakes to drop balls and, lucky bounces really. Every time it bounced, it went to a Barrow hand and they scored. But it is a performance definitely that the lads can look back and be happy with that, and look to take the positives into the game next week against Raiders, which will not be an easy game by any means.
No, and I think we were saying at the end of the game, weren't we? It's almost a frustrating one, because there was so much from that performance on Sunday for everyone involved with the Bears to be proud of, and so much for the team to take into the next couple of games. And yet at the same time, there's part of your brain that's just like, are we ever going to have a better chance of beating Barrow? And I mean, judging by what they showed on the first game of the season, yes, they absolutely will have another chance to beat Barrow. But in the heat of the moment, you're just thinking, it was there, it was in touching distance. But like you, I think so many positives, and I was really impressed with the physicality of the Bears team. And yeah, it was, as you say, it was something we touched on in that preview episode. I mean, that hit Peter Ryan put on Carl Forster was phenomenal. It was reminiscent of the Fui one, and he didn't get put in the sin bin this time as well. But I think what I found more impressive, I think the forwards did a terrific job, but I hadn't quite appreciated quite how strong the two Wellhams are in the tackle, because you look at them on the pitch and like they look, with greatest respect, they're pretty scrawny looking. They're not. You think of a modern rugby league centre, and they're pretty stacked and pretty athletic. Matty and Liam Wellham, their legs in particular don't look like they're going to have much strength to them. But I mean, in terms of not judging a book by a cover, those two guys are perfect examples of that, because the amount of times that they went into a tackle and drove people backwards.
And they nearly sliced some people in two a couple of times.
Yeah, and
genuinely crumpled people.
You could see the lift it gave the players as well. And I think something else that was striking was it felt like there were a lot of leaders on that pitch for the Bears. Like the two Wellhams are obviously very experienced. Nathan Hill at the back, you mentioned in the start how we could hear what was being said on the pitch, and he was talking the whole game and organising and just telling people where to be, telling people where to move to if they weren't in the right place. And then we had Dave Scott in the halves, who obviously player coach, so he's an influential person anyway, but he was doing a lot of string pulling. And then, we saw hints of Chris Cullymore back in 2020, and I thought he had a very impressive game. The likes of Peter Ryan, Brad Ho, Sam Bowring, all fronting up physically. And we both commented on how influential Kieran Sherratt was, particularly in the first half as well, before his injury. So, yeah, lots of things to get excited about there. And I've seen a few people mention on social media that they think the Bears don't look good this year. And I think that just shows ignorance, really. I think it's covering up for the Bears have a few names in there that people might not have heard of. I think after that performance on Sunday, people might be revising their opinion of what they think the Bears are going to be this year, because, and I know we shouldn't get carried away because there are other games coming up, but if they can put in that kind of performance against a team like Barrow, they're going to pick up wins this year, aren't they?
Yeah, I think you touched on it. The leaders on the pitch, and providing we can keep people fit and keep the squad fit, we will definitely pick up some wins this year. There is definitely a different attitude in the squad this year. I'm not disrespecting any previous squads, but certainly today, what the team were looking to do is match people across the par. And they didn't let their heads drop. They did it all for 80 minutes. They went for it today, and certainly they will. Not every team in this league is a big old pack, and the Bears will be, be able to match, pretty much everyone in the division on today, on the basis of today. It's filled me with a lot of confidence. That I think after the first half against Keighley in the pre-season friendly, it didn't look good. But they really have shown since then that this is a decent squad that's really, really got potential to do good things this year.
And you mentioned squad. I think that's a key word there, because there are players who weren't even involved on the pitch at the weekend still to come in. So, we're obviously very excited about our first ever Greek international coming in. Will Budd and Darius Hamilton were both sort of part of the crew on Sunday, but sort of doing the water boy and ball boy duties, and they both impressed in the games we saw in 2020. And there's other players that I just can't think off the top of my head to be challenging for those shirts as well. So yeah, there's
a lot of players in the squad who didn't make the 17 today, who would have been absolutely in the squad in previous years. I think there's a real strength and depth now. But this is a season where there's games every single week. So all I would say is I think anyone that didn't make the squad shouldn't be too disheartened, because they will be used this season. Absolutely, the squad will need to be quite a big squad to cope with the playing week in, week out. And obviously there's going to be injuries, but also tiredness. And, it's certainly going to be it's a short season, but it's going to be pretty intensive. Yeah.
I think, and to your point on the back-to-back games, I think there are obviously downsides to that, but I also see a big positive of that, in that we saw signs on Sunday that particularly when the Bears were in attack, they were starting to get some shapes together. As the game went on, they looked more accomplished in attack, and they were clearly starting to gel as a bit of a unit. And I think actually the fact that they've got games coming up every weekend, those shapes, those plays, they're going to click much sooner than they might do in previous years when there might have been extra off weeks and stuff, just because they're going to be on the field again really quickly. So I'm really excited to see the progression over the next couple of weeks, where particularly if we can keep that back line fit and get them hitting the ball at pace a bit more. Because I think there were signs on Sunday that they were a little tentative, a little hesitant at times, and you could see that sort of early season still working things out kind of thing to it. But we commented in the second half, when a couple of the times when some of the boys were hitting the ball at pace, they cut through that line, and it really did make a difference. So I feel like it's got the potential to get a lot smoother and a lot more effective very quickly. Actually,
there was players who made breaks. I mean, when the score was 28-20, it was all Bears at that point. The Bears were really sniffing on the Barrow line. It was just an unfortunate. I think we kicked it through on the last. Their winger caught the ball. We very nearly caught him, but he got away, ran 3/4 of the length of the field. Nathan Hill making a fantastic sort of last-ditch tackle, but then holding the guy down for too long. He's sin bin. That's it. Game over, really. It was, it was right up to that point. It was really, really close. So, I think fitness-wise and everything else, the Bears players looked very fit. I think we'll certainly see in the next 2 to 3 weeks as well. There will be some squads that maybe don't have the same level of fitness, and that will play a part as well. But the Bears looked strong throughout. As I said, there was times when I looked at the Barrow pack and they really were struggling. So the lads can definitely hold their heads high from today, but they need to think about the fact that there is more to come. The Bears teams of old used to put in spirited performances against very good teams, and in some way we as fans and as a team we were kind of satisfied with that. But I think this team this squad is capable of a lot, and they need to think about the positives from today and take that forward and think about getting wins on the board, particularly over the next 3 weeks.
Definitely. Right, let's cut off our rambling for a bit and let's hear another of the post-match interviews. This time, the thoughts of player coach Dave Scott.
Dave, obviously not the result you were hoping for, but I was just talking to Rich and plenty of positives to take from that. How did you see it from in the thick of the action?
Yeah, really positive. If anything, we're actually really disappointed to not come away with the result, because for large parts of the game I thought we were the better team. We talked all week about their middles being the big threat, and towards the back end of the game they actually ran out of subs, and I think in large parts of the game our middles dominated them, so full credit to them there. And they couldn't score tries on the edges even though it was a big field, so credit to our edge defence. It was just lapses in concentration where we turned over the ball, cheap play, gave away some cheap penalties, some repeat sets, and when you go back to back to back on your own goal line, we showed a hell of a lot of resilience, and we did it for large parts of the game, but unfortunately we just gave ourselves a little bit too much to do. So massively positive, and I cannot fault the lads' effort, but we just lack a little bit of game smarts at times. I think kicking the ball away in tackles 2 and 3 when we're trying to build pressure doesn't help. Throwing the ball into touch doesn't help. So there's plenty to work on, but I was speaking to Boomer there. I think they played Barrow this time, or at the first game of the season last year, and got 60 points put on them. I think the ball game was there for us to win today, so really disappointed.
I was going to say, it's one of those weirdly frustrating ones, isn't it? Because there's so much you can take pride from in that performance, but at the same time, that there was a chance to beat the promotion favourites there on the first day, wasn't it? So it's kind of, yes, lots of good stuff, but also what might have been.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the scoreboard before you go in at half-time and you go, you know something, we're only 10 points down here, we're in touching distance, and there was a gale blowing from that top end down to this bottom end, and I kind of thought, you know something, if we play field position and complete sets and build some pressure, it's going to be a game of who cracks first. Unfortunately, it was us on this occasion, so we need to learn from that, and we need to learn really quickly. 15 minutes left to go in the ball game, and there's 8 points in it, and we were playing as though it was the 79th minute and we had to score a try to win it, and that's just a little bit of maturity and a little bit of inexperience in the performance. But that said, I can't be more proud of the boys in the way that they put themselves about today. I cannot fault their effort. They were fantastic from 1 to 17. But like I said, we just need to smarten up a little bit. And if we do that and we play like that with that intensity, I don't think we'll lose too many this season, if I'm being completely honest.
Something I wanted to pick up on, actually, particularly in the back line today, you really got a sense of there being a group of leaders there, a lot of organisation, a lot of go forward in the tackle, and just a lot of talking. It feels like this season in particular that there is a real solid foundation behind the forwards this year, because we talked pre-season that you've been bulking up in the middle, but how important is it to have that foundation among your backs as well? Because we know we've got Reece and Hayden and Nathan who can fly when they get the ball in space, but actually you looked really solid and organised and composed as a unit today, and that must give you a lot of confidence in terms of going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of work on a good ball attack, and it's starting to flow, it's starting to look a lot better, but it's still not perfect. I think you could probably see that from the side today. Timings and leads were a little bit off, some of the passes were a little bit off, and that just comes from gelling together as a team. That comes from game time together, and unfortunately we've not had enough of that just because of the pandemic, but we're only going to get better, and that's the exciting thing. But as you say, we really do have a good platform with the forwards. There's just little things to tidy up. The back line, there's plenty of threats there. You can see it with the Welland brothers, Liam on the right, Matty on the left, Nath Hill at fullback. I thought he was outstanding today, probably my man of the match, to be honest with you. Fantastic work. There's threats all over the field for us, and it's exciting. But as I keep alluding to, we need to be a little bit smarter.
And how did you find it personally in the middle there?
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing in the halves, and then it was very challenging going to hooker, because I think that was kind of the part of the game where it was on a knife edge, and the game could have gone either way. Unfortunately, it didn't go our way because we just kept giving away ball, giving away cheap penalties, cheap errors, which was frustrating, and being caught in the middle when you're going back to back to back to back. and having to defend up, it's not an easy task. And then having to get them the ball in the middle and try and organise the troops to go forward. Yeah, really tough, but I really enjoyed it, and I hope that I'm going to get more of that. So it's a discussion me and Squires are going to have to sit down and have about the best way forward to organise the team.
And looking ahead to next week, West Wales, it's one of those games we talked about being something that you would have targeted before the season started. It feels like you've got a good platform to build on and take into that game now.
Absolutely. We need to be positive about this because it is a very positive performance. The result, maybe not so positive, and in my opinion it should have been the other way around. I genuinely believe we're the better team, but if we turn up and play like we did today, I think we'll stand a very good chance against West Wales, but we're going to have to earn that. It's not a give me. They're going to be targeting us as much as we're targeting them, so it's going to be a war of attrition, and it's going to be who breaks first. So we need to stick to the processes of the game, which is completion and field position, and then when we don't have the football, we need to enjoy defending.
Well done today, Dave, and thanks for your time, and I'll catch you again soon.
Cheers, thank you very much, speak to you soon.
So huge thanks to Dave for chatting to us after the game. And I think, he covered a lot of the things that we said ourselves there. So lots of positives to take from the Barrow game, particularly as we go into another game this weekend away to the West Wales Raiders. So Craig, the Raiders started their season, as many might have predicted, with a loss away to Rochdale. I think it was 40-16 in the end, which was probably nowhere near as big a margin of defeat as many might have predicted. And I think it was only 12-4 at half time, if I remember correctly. It's a game we know the Bears will have been targeting, and I think we would both assume the Bears are going to have some confidence going into that game. But as Dave said in his interview, it's not a give me, is it? And they've got to be focused this weekend. But do you think we're justified in hoping for a Bears victory?
It's absolutely not a give me. I mean, they have improved massively. I saw some of the highlights from their pre-season friendly against London Scholars, and they've got a lot of very good players now, a lot of skillful players, and they've got some pace as well. They've put up a good showing today, and certainly at half time, I would imagine there was a lot of eyebrows raised because Rochdale looked like they've got a pretty strong squad. So it won't be easy. And in the past, I mean, we lost to them. It's the only win they've had, but we went there thinking perhaps that we were going to win that day, and we came away with nothing. So they'll be really if they want to kick on this season, they'll be wanting to win home games, especially, and they'll be wanting to win home games against the likes of the Bears, the likes of the Scholars, North Wales Crusaders, etc. Teams that they think they can overtake in there to show progress. The Bears equally can't just put in a good performance today and then go away to West Wales Raiders and not come away with anything. That's something the coaching staff, I'm sure, will be saying to the lads, that it is a must-win game. It would set a good platform if we can get some points on the board early on in the season and then push on from there. They will absolutely have a better season this year than they've had in previous years. They look very, very strong. They've brought some good players in, and the coach as well is a decent coach who's had time to work with players now. So I think the Bears will have enough to win the game, but I think it'll be a tough old battle for at least 60 minutes, I would imagine.
Yeah, I can see that happening. Well, we'll have to wait and see how it all pans out. It is a game, again, that will be played behind closed doors, but it will be available for streaming. Keep an eye out on the Bears social media channels for details of that, and on the Our League app. And of course, if you're not already on the Our League app, please do get on there and select the Bears as your team. It really does help in terms of funding and things going forward for the club. But I think that's about it for us. Positive way to start the season, if not one that ended with the W. But we will be back next week to bring you all of the news and reaction from the trip to West Wales. And of course, look ahead to, all being well, the return of fans into the Butts Park Arena for that glut of home games that we've got over the coming weeks. So lots to get excited about, but most importantly, the fact that the season is here and up and running. It's actually happening. All of that waiting has finally been worth it. So thanks as always to you lot for listening. Thanks to you, Craig, for joining me. And
it's good to be back.
Yeah, it definitely is. And we will see you all very soon.